Oh, he's very popular, Ed. The sportos, the motorheads, geeks, sluts, bloods, wastoids, weebies, dickheads, they all adore him. They think he's a righteous dude. Welcome to the Hey Guys podcast. I'm Rob, that's Liam, and welcome to our third in the Liam designed Chicago trilogy. But I'm calling it the Del Close trilogy because that dude seems to be in everything Chicago. This week we watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Ferris has decided that today he doesn't want to go to school. So he plans an elaborate ruse in order to go on the Mitch. Or for my non-Cardiff friends, truant. This film has it all. The lovable rogue, the quintessential 80s best friend who is always along for the ride, and of course the hottest girl in school, who doesn't go for the jocks or the sportos, but the funny guy. This film starts from the off. There are no long introductions or explanations about what's going on. It just happens. In many ways, this film feels like a sequel. The day after, our plucky hero gets the girl and defeats the bully, and the whole school learns who he is. And yes, even though this film is fun and lets us look at a brighter side of Chicago that we have yet to see in our last two films, I had fun with this film and overall do enjoy it, even with its absolutely glaringly obvious problem. And that problem, I hear you ask, what is that problem? Well, even with all of his charm and wit, Ferris is just a dick. He is just a user that doesn't seem to care about anyone other than himself, doesn't care who gets hurt, and will tell himself whatever he wants in order to feel good about what happens. Before Liam tries to argue this fact and say Ferris does not belong on that shelf alongside Daniel LaRusso, I argue that at the end, when it's Ferris states he wants to take the rap from Cameron's father, if Cameron said yes, Ferris would never have admitted the truth and would have thrown someone else under the bus. I'm going to go out on a limb and say you disagree with me, mate.
Yes, yeah, I did. No. Right, because I had it down at one point. I did make a note to say, "Is Ferris a dick?" Basically, like
Yes.
is this whole thing like basically is he friends with Cameron because
Because
he's
Cameron, he's a user. Cyrus is a user.
No, but that's the thing though. Like even Sloane says at the end, did you have this planned all along? And I think the idea of Ferris is that he's so cool and so in control that he did have this planned all along. Like when he, to your point, when he asks Cameron, he's like, "I'd take the rap for you." He knows Cameron's not going to allow him to do that, but that's important. Like he's doing this because he knows Cameron needs this. Like it's easy to view it the one way, like you said, like the hot girl who hangs around with the minger just to make her look even hotter. Like those people exist. And for a split second, I was like, is Ferris this dude? Is he just hanging around with him because it makes him look cooler and he can just get him to see what he wants? But by the end, I'm just like, no, I'm pretty sure Ferris is just doing all this for Cameron. The whole day is set up for Cameron. And what I think backs that up is the conversation they have at the end about, and it's one of the low-key elements of this film, which I never really thought about. And I'm not even sure if it's a subgenre, but it should be because it's one of those like really important moments in a lot of people's lives that is rarely kind of treated with any kind of respect on screen. And it's that in between high school and university moments, or high school and college, whatever you want to call it. It's one of those low-key massive moments in your life because you've been friends with these kids your entire life. And in a lot of instances, and it's the same with me, all of a sudden you go off in different directions. And he's like, I've been friends with Cameron my whole life. And if I leave with him in this state, he's going to be fucked. He even says, like the scene on the beach, he's like, oh, he'll marry the first girl that lays him. And she won't respect him because no one can respect somebody who kisses your ass. He's almost trying to set him up for the rest of his life. And the best way he knows how to do this is by giving him this day and have him kind of at least fight back against his father.
I like the way you're looking at it, and I can clearly see that in the film. Like that is a good way to look at it. But unfortunately, I just can't get past the fact that Ferris is a dick, right? When he set him up, okay, in your words, he set this whole day up, so he knew something was going to happen to the car. And what I liked at the end, he says he'll take the rap, and says Cameron says no, I've got to stand up for him. I appreciate it's the rest of the day then it's Ferris getting home, but that's the last we saw of Cameron. You know why? Because Cameron's dad probably murdered him for destroying his car.
Now, let's be clear. I think Ferris has gone into this day with the best of intentions. And again, because this is almost like a fable, like, and we'll get to Ferris in a minute. Ferris is so cool and so in control of everything and everyone that you believe that he might have just pulled this all off, even like, the day itself. And we'll get into the fact that another one of the issues of this film is that the day fundamentally, from a time perspective, just doesn't make sense.
Oh, you mean the day that lasts 15 hours?
Oh, it's absolutely ridiculous.
On the fact that high school students, sorry, on the fact that high school students can just talk his way into a float and do a song. Anyway, yeah, I know we'll get into the thing, yeah.
Again, we'll get to the parade in a bit. That's a whole different thing. But even if I'm kind of the mindset that Ferris is trying to do right by his friend, don't get me wrong, it still benefits him. Ferris is constantly looking out for himself, and he's clearly used to getting his own way. But I do think he has Cameron's best intentions at heart. But that does not stop the fact that 30 minutes after Ferris goes and has his chase through, the neighborhood, blah, 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 Cameron is literally murdered by his father. If I did that to my dad, he would have strung me up in the town fucking square. And that's not even to me. And that was if I kicked the shit out of my dad's whatever bullshit car. Now, this is one of those moments where you watch it as a kid, and I think you could probably, say you were watching this when you were 12, 13, 16, for instance, when you were younger. And you were probably Team Cameron, fuck your parents, fuck that, he's got to stand up for himself.
That's it. And you're Team Ferris, and at that age, it's all fun, it's all good.
Yeah.
You get to our age now, and that's the reason I've seen it. Cameron's best friend is a complete and utter twat who just uses him, and
He's
Cameron,
twat.
from the mind of a parent, from Cameron's father's mind, who doesn't like.
Yeah, he
Ferris.
does say. Yeah, he does say. Yeah. So
Ferris is a twat, and Cameron, we shipped him off to military school. He's gone.
Well, right. Here's the big question, because again, it's whose side do you take? Do you take Cameron's side, or do you take the Ferrari side? And I guess it's Cameron's dad. The first question is, it's how bad is Cameron's dad? Because it's alluded to, but you have to take into consideration we're not just talking about a car. We are talking about the 1961 Ferrari 250 GT California. Not only one of the greatest movie cars of all time, we are talking one of the greatest cars of all time, full stop. There were only 56 ever made, and to put it into context, they were sold, two of them were sold in 2017 and 2018. No, 2015 and 2016, sorry, for $17 and $18 million respectively. So he's just kicked $18 million worth of car out the back of whatever the fuck kind of house that is. And
why would you have the garage up there? But
I don't know. But that is the thing now. It's impossible to take Cameron's side when you know what the car is, how much it's worth. And I'm again, what would his dad I'm assuming his dad's not fucking molesting him, for heaven's sake. He's just
his dad is his dad's probably on a power trip, just always Cameron, you're just a mother's boy. But you mean the car that is so choice? If you have the means to get one, I suggest you do.
That's the only time I've ever heard that term, by the way.
If you have the means to steal one from your friend and cause him to be murdered, because Cameron's dead. I'm going to go through the rest of this. Cameron is dead.
Mm-hmm.
So he's stolen it from his dad. And such a dick thing, whether he's planned this or not, whether he wants to do it because in his mind, and again, in his dickish mind, I'm doing this for Cameron, but I'm getting something along the way, I get to drive the car.
Oh, yeah.
It's his fault he didn't lock the garage. What a fucking twat move.
The thing is, right, you're painting yourself into a very middle-aged and, dare I say, Rooney-shaped corner. Because, as I'm sure you notice, with this film, the only people who get it rough in this film are the people who aren't on the side of Ferris. And they even make the point, in one of the great movie cameos of all time, when Charlie Sheen shows up, she's, basically giving your speech. He's a dick. And his whole thing is I don't think it's Ferris. I think it might be you. And it's the only two people who don't like Ferris are Rooney and Jeannie. And they go through the fucking ringer in this film. And one of the lessons I think from the film is just dude's just fucking killing at life. Don't be upset about Ferris. Don't be angry at him just because he's slaying. Like you said at the top of the podcast with that great quote. And by the way, that might be one of your best quotes. You do a very kind of Midwestern American woman incredibly well. But it's everyone loves him. And some people just have that gene. They could just get away with shit. I had this friend, he actually moved to America. He's the same thing. He's a bit of an asshole, but he just had that knack and that kind of winning, charming smile that he could say and do anything and just fucking get away with it. How the hell does he do it? It's one of those intangible things. You couldn't even explain it.
unfortunately for me, it's
Mhm.
you. Anyone I ever speak to who's just met you or whatever always say, "Oh, I love it." Like you're so tall for some reason. You must be disarming because everybody
Mm.
fucking. I've
That's
made it a
so nice
mission
of you
to
to
find
say.
somebody that doesn't like you, and at the moment, I haven't found one. For you,
Don't say that.
you
Don't say that because people will respond to this podcast. Be like, listen, I've listened to this podcast for a few weeks now, and I do not fucking like Liam.
in that case, I've just added a new text function on your podcast of choice. So your podcaster of choice now lets you text us. Let us know. Do you like Liam?
Oh yeah, dude. Let me know if you think I'm a pice of shit. Please get in touch. That's exactly what I
You
want.
you you haven't got to go far to find somebody that thinks I'm a POS. So
Well, you are attacking Ferris Bueller. Like, let's be clear, one of the coolest character. Like, is he the coolest character in cinema history? Like, I think he might be. Like, the whole idea, I think, for most people is that they like totally just want to be him, and a big part of that is like he is. It's weird because it's not just the characters, the film as well. It's simultaneously mega 80s, and this might be like the quintessential 80s movie in many respects, but it's also like oddly like what's the word I'm looking for? Not timely,
charming.
timeless. There we go,
Okay.
timeless. Where I think people could watch it now and still be like, yeah, I get it. Like, this is awesome. A big part of that is Ferris because he is the ultimate modern day man, which is bizarre for a film from 1986 because he's understanding. He has no social barriers. He's totally accepting of everyone. Well, except for his views on European socialism or fascism for that
Fascism. Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still forward thinking, but at the same time, he just wants a car, which again is one of those things you can relate to. It's like, okay, he doesn't believe in isms, but it always comes back to the fact that he's still an 80s kid and he's still just like, at the core of this film is just like, the only thing he seems to want is a car. And I think that makes him oddly one of the most relatable characters of all time. Like you look, and it shouldn't work because he's got great taste in music. He likes sports. He's in with every crowd. He's an IT geek. He's smart. He's got the hottest girlfriend. His best friend is a nerd. Politically, like he's part Republican, part Democrat, part libertarian. He's like all things to all men. Like anyone can kind of cling on to one aspect of Ferris, I think.
I have to stop it. I don't think, first of all, I don't think Cameron's a nerd. I don't think Cameron goes to school enough to be classed as anything. From where I can gather, Cameron just stays home all the time
Oh,
because
I
he's sick.
bet you he's smart as fuck. I
Oh,
bet you he's smart as
probably.
fuck.
But I mean, you're just making that justification. So I've got to stick up for Cameron on that one. You don't know if he's a nerd yet. He
No.
does have the hottest girl. And it's funny, isn't it? Because I do enjoy this film. I still like this film,
Mm-hmm,
besides Ferris,
mm-hmm.
because I can't relate. As a 41-year-old man now watching this, I can't relate to Ferris. I can't
Mm-hmm.
relate to like the things he's doing. I'm more for the people around him, thinking this guy's just being a prick. Like,
Well, I think that's one of the elements of this film is that, and one of the arguments. If you look online, like obviously this film's called Ferris Bueller. He's the thing that stands out. And when you're a kid, like yeah, of course you see Ferris Bueller, like he's so cool. You want to be like him. Blah blah blah. He's got everything seemingly except for a car, obviously. But as you get older, not only do you realize you're probably more of a Cameron, but at one point you're like, no, I'm definitely Cameron. Or God forbid, I've become Rooney, which is
Rooney,
which
God,
isn't
yeah.
out, which isn't out of the question. I mean, you've
I
got
mean,
the mustache now.
I'll go on a limb now and say I'm not Rooney. I don't want to be Rooney, but
No, nobody wants to be Rooney. But I think the argument for a lot of people is that on the surface level, this is a Ferris movie. But narratively and conceptually, it's actually more of a Cameron movie in many
yeah,
respects.
well, yeah, because it's showing us like it's helping Cameron. I do agree with you
He's
on
the
that.
one going on a journey. Like
Yeah,
Ferris goes on zero journey. He's the same. He's just got like his whole story is just shenanigans. Like, can I
yeah.
get this day off? And like I said, we've kind of argued either side of is he doing all this for Cameron, yay or nay? But in terms of the person who goes on a journey, it's 100% Cameron.
Yeah. Did you
So
feel as well, as I said in my intro, did you feel that this film had sequel vibes? When you usually get these high school films, it's about the guy trying to get the hottest girl in school, and it ends then with the school loving him. And so to me, this felt like and more as I watched it, this felt like the next day. Right, he's got the girl now. Now he needs to do something to impress her. So it starts straight. There was no introduction to Ferris really. As soon as it starts, it's him playing hooky or going on the Mitch or whatever you want to call it. Sorry, I'll keep saying Mitch because I'm a Cardiff boy. But so it really felt like a sequel to me. It was so
I
odd. It
I
had
know
that.
what you mean, but I think that comes down to the fantastic writing from John Hughes. Like
Oh, yeah, yeah.
everything
I
about
didn't
this
say it was
film.
bad. I didn't say it
Oh
was bad.
no,
It just
no,
felt,
no!
yeah.
I know that. But it's one of those things. I think fundamentally, what it is this film and all of the relationships in particular. There's an emphasis on show rather than tell. Oh, sorry, is that yeah? Show rather than tell. I've got that the right way around. I do apologize. But that idea that instead of like explaining, like you said, you're almost like dropped into it, and on top of that, you're dropped into all these relationships. There's no explanation for Ferris and Sloane's relationship or Ferris and Cameron's, but because the writing's so good, all their interactions feel natural, and not only that, you're getting their relationship from those interactions. Like they have that, when they call Rooney. He does the fake call to Rooney, and they have that
Yeah.
like little like kind of falling out at the end of it. That tells you everything about their relationship. And even the stuff with Sloane, like you said, they just show up and they're just an established relationship. Boyfriend and girlfriend. You don't know how long they've been together, but it also doesn't matter because you're just like, this kid is the coolest kid in school. She's the hottest girl in school. They've ended up together. Ferris and Cameron have clearly been friends. You assume since they were like 3 years old.
He said he's known
And
him for
all
years.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, and all that's just delivered through the dialogue without any kind of explanation of what, like you said, what happened yesterday or how they ended up in this situation because it's not necessary. But like I said, a lot of that comes down to John Hughes' writing, I think.
She is smoking as well, isn't she, Sloan?
Oh my
Yeah.
days, she is so smoking. Like she is one of my all-time early years crushes.
Yeah.
Like without. It's weird though because Mia Sara she's also in Legend.
Yeah, she's done fuck all, really.
Well, it's weird because obviously Legends came out like similar ballpark, wasn't the same year? Was it a couple of years
85
before?
and
I think
86.
85.
Legend was 85.
And this was 87. Yeah,
86.
was this 86 or was it 87?
Yeah,
Sorry,
no, it was 86.
No, you are right. And for some odd reason, I didn't watch Legend, maybe because the whole fantasy thing. I didn't fall in love with Mia in that film, but in this film, oh my days! And don't get me wrong, her hotness is given an uphill battle. Like the name Sloane, what the fuck kind of name is that for a hot girl? And on top of that, she's wearing like a jacket with tassels. It's not the coolest look in the world, but she overcomes that with her hotness. She is
There is something about it. It was, I don't know why it's random. But what's random then is the next film I can remember in was fucking Time Cop 8 years later.
Oh yeah,
where
she
she
was in
played
Time
Van
Cop, wasn't
Damme's
she?
wife. Yeah, 8 years after this, she plays Van Damme's wife.
It's weird because her whole character trait is just kind of being awesome. And she's like a bit of a ride or die bitch as well. Like she's just down for whatever. Like all the shenanigans, she's like totally cool. She's totally fun.
Do you know why?
Like, basically, she's written as like the perfect girlfriend.
Because she's seen everything Ferris can do the day before when he won her heart. I still say this is a fucking sequel.
No, I get it. I get it. You are completely dropped into this. And it almost feels like what it ends up feeling is like episodic. You can imagine, and don't get me wrong, this wouldn't work because they proved it. Like there was a TV show, it didn't work. They were talking about doing a sequel. I'm glad they didn't. You just kind of like the rest of Ferris's life before and after, you just kind of assume, obviously not Cameron, because he's obviously dead after this film finishes. But it feels episodic because you just dropped in and it's just, the adventures of Ferris Bueller. Today, Ferris doesn't want to go to school. He wants to go to Chicago downtown and try and do everything in a day instead. And it just totally works, despite the fact that, like you said, once you stop and think about it, you're like, wait a minute, we are just dropped from a great height directly into this movie and we're off to the races with no explanation as to what's going on. But it doesn't matter because, again, the writing's so good.
I love the bullshit hacking as well that he does, right?
Nonsense. He's the master of bullshit 80s computer hacking.
Yeah, he is the master of bullshit 80s hacks. Yeah, absolutely. But when Rooney is looking at the screen and it goes from 9 to 8 to 7, that wouldn't be that. He wouldn't be deleting it and it'd be going down each one. He'd delete the 9 and have to put a 1 in. So basically, what's happening on Ferris' side, he's going delete 8, delete 7, delete 6. Delete 5. What are you doing?
It's nonsense. But if you've seen, again, another film, Matthew Broderick, War Games, and you've tried to see him explain computers in that film, it is absolutely phenomenal. And we've had this a few times on the podcast where computers in the 80s were mental. And it's easy for us to kind of laugh at it now, but computers were this like totally new thing in the 80s, and especially in people's homes. So nobody really knew how they worked. I mean, I still don't know how fucking computers work now. It just seems like magic to me. But people really didn't have a clue. And obviously in these movies, they felt the need to add some kind of visual representation as to what is happening. They kind of even had it was in a completely different way, the way they kind of visually tried to explain like the net in the 90s, and you end up with shit like hackers.
Hackers, which we're gonna have to do on this podcast.
Oh, we 100% have to do hackers. That film is dog shit, but it's loads of fun.
You want to talk TV film hotness? You mentioned War Games. Look at Ali Sheedy as Jennifer in that film. She was one of my crushes. Growing up.
Yeah, she was hot as well. I'm not sure if she was Sloane. God, even saying it sounds weird. Sloane is such
like Sloane.
Sloane's a horrible name for a hot girl.
I like Sloane. I mean, I won't.
You hear
a horrible name
names,
for a hot girl.
You know, like you hear some girls like, "Oh, my friend so and so," and you're like, "Oh, I bet she's hot with a name like that." If Bethan said, "Oh, I'm going to bring my friend over, Sloane," my first question is like, "Is that a dude from Estonia?" Like, I don't know who the fuck is going to show up. That's a weird ass name. But anyway, bringing it back to Matthew Broderick, who I know you have an issue with Ferris Bueller. You think he's a bit of a dick, but Matthew Broderick is perfectly cast because
so good. He's so disarming.
So relatable because a big part of that is the fact that he's not too handsome. He's just handsome enough.
And he doesn't have like, I know he has great screen presence, but it's like it's toned down a little bit when it needs to be. If you take the dick side of it away, some of the things he does and the way he talks to the screen and stuff, I think he's doing great. I cannot fault Matthew Broderick playing Ferris Bueller. I just think the character Ferris Bueller is a bit of a dick. But
he's a bit of a dick in almost, and it's, I guess if you were going to use a kind of contemporary comparison, the most obvious, and it is very on the nose, but it's Deadpool. Like he was doing Deadpool long before Deadpool. Like the whole fourth wall breaking, we take it for granted now, especially in this film. Make no mistake, it should not work. It should be fucking horrible. And for some odd reason in this movie, it totally works. And a big part of that, obviously, it's John Hughes' script, but a massive part of that is Matthew Broderick.
Ryan Reynolds understood that as well because they did the Ferris Bueller thing at the end with "Why You Still Here? Time to Go Home."
Course.
So he understood, and I like this fourth wall break because it didn't take you out of the film.
No,
like it's delivering a narrative.
Do it either.
No, but it's delivering a narrative you need. And that's how it's explaining these new characters that keep coming in and things like that. But he doesn't do it at every character. It's not like he just turns around and goes, "Oh, Rooney's a dick. Rooney's been out to get me since day one." He doesn't say anything about Rooney. Doesn't say anything about...
No.
It's just when you need that narrative information to keep going, then he breaks the fourth wall and tells you. And I think that's great. I do feel,
and it's perfectly timed as well. So, sorry, just to kind of back up your point there. It's a great point because I never really thought about the fact that he's not used. It's not kind of carpet bomb throughout the entire film. The fourth wall. Yeah. If anything, you get it quite heavily at the intro when he's explaining to you how to like get out of school, basically.
When he's on his own, so instead of him talking to himself, he's talking to you.
Yeah. But then it kind of disappears when he's with everyone else, and then it just naturally just pops in 2 or 3 times more in the movie, and it just for some odd reason it's just like it just works. You never question it.
The most you get after that is when he's in the toilet and he's taking an uncomfortably long piss and washing his hands, and he's telling you everything about the car and what he thinks about camera and blah.
I'm sorry, what constitutes an uncomfortably long piss?
What he was doing, he was in that toilet for a long time. They were still eating their meal while he was just going around.
I just wonder, like next time I'm like having a wee, at one point I'm like, has this become uncomfortable yet? I don't know.
Oh, you want to know
where the line is?
You want to know comfortably long? Wait for Dave when he needs to take a piss.
Oh, is he pee like a racing snake or?
Yeah, that guy won't pee for like 3 days apparently, and then just
he's like a bit of a camel kind of thing, and then he just okay. Well, that sounds gross. I'm glad we had that conversation. Anyway, sorry.
No problems. You're the one who brought it up. I feel for Jeannie in this as well. I mean, because she doesn't get much to do. Jennifer Grey, like her character is meant to be the bratty sister, but she's the older sister, so it's weird. And then she doesn't do anything really. It was just like, okay, I'm going to be angry in school because I am angry, apparently. Then I meet Charlie Sheen. I get off with him, and now I'm a good person, and I'm going to help Ferris. Like, her character arc just goes really quickly. And I know it's not Jeannie's day off, but it just,
I think she does play an oddly important role. One, again, coming back to that point that, it's kind of show, don't tell. With that, they're hardly on screen together at all, but they're still one of the great on-screen brother and sister like relationships. Like I just totally buy into the fact that they're brother and sister. But again, I think she's there to just show how charming And like the kind of person that Ferris is, the fact that I know it drives you crazy, but the fact that he's got basically everyone wrapped around his little finger and how annoyed, like you're basically Jeannie is you. She's the one looking and going, wait, am I taking fucking crazy pills here? He's a dick and everybody fucking loves him. It's driving her up the wall. And I totally get it from that sibling situation. And even I can kind of get not only where she's coming from, but like when at the start of the film, even Ferris, he says to the screen, he's like, oh, one of my worst performances of my entire career, and they bought it. You know, when he's talking to his parents and he's really laying it on thick, and they still buy it. And she's there like, what the fuck? I totally understand that because as the oldest of two brothers, I couldn't do anything. Like literally, if I was missing a leg, my parents would send me to school. I remember I had braces. And I'm talking about the full monstrosity ones with the elastic bands at the back. I had those put in the morning. I was back in school in the afternoon, dribbling on myself. My brother, who's 2.5 years younger than me, he could get off school at the drop of a fucking hat. And I'm like, maybe he is just more charming than me. I don't know, but he used to drive me up the wall.
I don't think it's charming. I think it's younger sibling, right? Because I'm the younger sibling, and I pretty much got away with it. And I know for a fact I'm not charming.
Right? Oh, well, I was the genie in that situation. But I think an important part for her, because for the most part, to your point, she is quite one note. And when I was watching it, I was talking to a friend of mine recently about the greatest cameos of all time. I was talking about like Alec Baldwin and Glengarry Glen Ross. And as per a post I put on Instagram, we got onto Macho Man Randy Savage in Spider-Man. That got me thinking of Hulk Hogan in Rocky 3 and blah, blah, blah. I totally forgot about Charlie Sheen in this movie. And he comes in and he's so fucking good. He's on screen for what, like a couple of minutes? And he's so charming. He knocks out the park. And not only that, but he gives Jeannie depth in that one scene.
I love his stoned eyes as well, where he's meant to be a drug user, right? And one of the trivia says that he got that effect by not sleeping the night before, staying up for 24 hours straight. Awesome. And now I know Charlie Sheen as I do. Fuck that. That dude was probably on Tiger Blood at that time and just...
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he comes in like, oh, you've done a really good job. Yeah, I stayed up all night playing video games. Yeah, he was completely on the gear.
Yeah.
But you know his character is named Garth Volbeck. Like what?
I thought it was just boy in police station.
No, it's listed as Garth Volbeck. I'm like, what the fuck kind of name is that? For such it's up there with Sloane. Why are you giving the coolest characters the worst names?
That's better than last week when you had Ness's wife.
Oh, also, that was pretty rough.
In regards to cameos, I say cameos. It wouldn't have been a cameo back then. For it would have been just her in the film. Simone in the economics class was fucking Kirsty Swanson.
Yeah. Where she gives the whole speech about my brother's, sister's, friends, cousins.
I got it by ear because her line is fantastic. Because I always say when somebody says I know somebody, I always make like fun, like my best friend's neighbor's dog Walker or something. He's sick. My best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend heard from this guy who knows this kid who's going with the girl who saw Ferris pass out at 31 Flavors last night.
Amazing.
That is more than 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. That's just fucking, that's insane.
Oh, it's bonkers. But again, it speaks to the fact that this film, it does have a great premise, but it's spectacularly low key. If you take away the fact that Cameron may or may not be suicidal, I don't think he is. I think he's just a moody teenager. A moody teenager played by a 29-year-old man, by the way. But that was something we used to do. That wasn't that shocking back in the day. Like, Spider-Man was 29.
One of those teenagers. I went over my mum's house the other day and she was watching Grease, the John Travolta film.
Ridiculous.
Fuck me. If one guy actually had a receding hairline.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think not only was he 29, but Alan Ruck is one of those guys I just assume never looked young. And I think actually for
Alan Ruck
the fact that
he would probably look like Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. Where he was probably going to school with a briefcase and a fucking tie.
Oh, so wait, you are agreeing now that he was a nerd?
I'm just saying. I'd say Alan Ruck.
Alan Ruck.
Alan Ruck, not Cameron.
Fair enough.
Stop calling Cameron a nerd.
Although I'll give him this, like he wears that Detroit Red Wings jersey, which is very cool, but he also wears it with like khakis and white socks and black shoes, which I know is like 1986, but it's not a great look, despite the fact that the jersey itself is dope. And I always thought that was weird when I was younger, because obviously, this is a Chicago movie. The Chicago have the Blackhawks. It's a massive sport. It's the set, probably like, if not the biggest sports city in the US, like, it's up there with New York. And he's playing the fucking Detroit Red Wings. And supposedly the reason for that was that Cameron had a great relationship with his grandfather, who was from Detroit, and obviously doesn't have a great relationship with his father, who's from Chicago. So I assume his dad is like a Blackhawks fan, and he's like, "Fuck you, Dad. This is how I'm gonna, retaliate. I'm gonna support the Red Wings," which I guess kids do. But growing up, at least, it's an iconic jersey. It looks really cool. It's just like, where the fuck is he wearing a Detroit jersey? Like you said, never mentioned in the script. It's just there in the background, I suppose.
You said Alan Ruck was 29, Broderick was 24, but Mia Sara was 18. Like, she was actually, she was her age. Because I remember reading again that John Hughes said he wanted somebody older to capture the essence of Sloane being feeling older, and he was so surprised when Mia Sara came in and said, "Oh no, I'm 18." Like, it was everything.
She doesn't. This isn't me trying to be weird, because we said she doesn't look 18. Like, if you told me to that point exactly, if you told me she was 25 when she made this, you'd absolutely believe her. Like, the thought of dating her at like 18, like, she would eat you alive. You would have to have Ferris Bueller levels of confidence to be dating a girl like Sloane when you were 18.
I had to think better of myself then and avoid making an R. Kelly joke when you said that.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm proud of you for not doing that.
Thank you.
But you mentioned there John Hughes. I mean, obviously, is this the quintessential John Hughes movie? Or is it still, do you think of the Breakfast? Because I know the Breakfast Club is iconic, but I don't think it's aged as well as this. So I actually think of all his films, the films he's directed, written and directed, I think this has become his most iconic movie.
I don't know if this is his most iconic, because I guess it depends on.
Okay, sorry, I did use the term quintessential rather than iconic. Sorry, Breakfast Club is maybe more iconic. This being what I think has now become the quintessential. Sorry, John Hughes song.
Yeah, but I don't like the Breakfast Club. I never have. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's like, I don't like, was it 16 Candles, the Breakfast Club, couple of but I love.
I mean, his run is unreal. Like, from
his run is fantastic. But I love Weird Science. I like Ferris Bueller. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I want to say I like it. I don't know if I've seen it, which sounds a bit terrible.
Well, I mean, we should totally do it for the podcast, because that one is. Again, I don't kind of relate it to John Hughes in the same way, because I think when you think John Hughes, you think high school, you think Sherman, Illinois. But Plane, Trains, and Automobiles is top tier John Hughes.
Yeah. But that's it. But they're John Hughes written films. All the films about Sherman, Illinois, and all these kids, they're written films. He hasn't really directed an awful lot. He's only directed 9. And
but
more of them.
But what is it?
What a 9 film. But what I'm saying, he hasn't done the like you've said, and I don't want to say quintessential again. You feel more. He's only, like, of his high school ones that feel like 16 Candles and Breakfast Club. They feel like the Sherman, Illinois, the ones that belong in that thing. But then when you look at Weird Science, Ferris Bueller, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Uncle Buck, none of them feel like, again, a John Hughes written film like 16 Candles or Breakfast Club.
I think when you do jump to John Hughes, and again, he did have that amazing run for like 8 years, and in many respects, I do think for many people in particular, like, John Hughes almost represents the 80s, certainly 80s Americana, and certainly, like, quote unquote, modern Chicago on screen. I'm probably doing the modern thing because we did The Untouchables last week, set in the 1930s. But for me growing up, when I thought of Chicago, I thought of John Hughes films. And when I think of John Hughes, I do think of those key high school films. I'd probably throw Weird Science in there, but it would be 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Weird Science, and Bueller. And those were all done between 84 and 86, which is insane. And, that's not to mention the fact that he wrote National Lampoon's Vacation, This Christmas Vacation, The Great Outdoors, and, little known movie, Home Alone.
So his writing is fantastic.
It's crazy.
I'm like, he writing or directing or whatever, it's on a run. I mean, a lot of films now based on characters that he's done previously. But what I like is, do you see what is? I don't know if you're looking at it, is IMDb or whatever now. Did you see the last film he ever directed?
No.
Curly Sue.
Oh, was that the last one you directed?
That
Because
was
yeah,
the
that would have
last one he
been
directed.
fuck. That was only like 91, 92, something like
Spot
that.
on, 91. Yeah. Like I said,
Yeah, because
he's
he,
only
I mean,
done,
he wrote like right. It's easy to forget. Like he wrote the screenplay for like 101 Dalmatians
yeah,
and shit like
but he's
that.
only directed 8 films. He's not like,
Yeah, I just thought there was like I just assumed there was one further out. Like I know like he did the majority of his directing work in that spell between 83 and 1990. But I assumed there was like one just kind of hanging around off in the distance. But
no,
no.
no. Like
Maybe Curly
he
Sue
wrote
was
a bunch of
rubbish.
films we love. He wrote, like you said, The Great Outdoors,
Yeah.
Home Alone, Beethoven, fucking he's some kind of wonderful, which I mentioned last week. He's
What
written
was the one with Jennifer Connelly where she's an absolute fucking smoke show in it? She's always wearing a white top, which is almost see-through. It was like 92, 93.
Jennifer Connelly.
Jennifer Connelly, yeah. He wrote a film with her in it. It must have been around 90. If you've got IMDb open, it would have been around
Oh,
92,
yeah,
93.
yeah, yeah. Career Opportunities with
That's the one. Oh
Frank
my God.
Whaley. Yeah,
She
yeah, yeah.
is so fucking hot in that film. If you're talking about crushes, Jesus Christ. But well, I guess a weird comparison would be Matthew Broderick in terms of like, by 1990, you're like, well, John Hughes is just going to keep going. He's just going to keep cranking out these films, keep going on as director. And it just didn't happen. He kind of moved away from his 80s persona and started kind of pushing the boat out, writing different things. And it's weird because Matthew Broderick, as you said, he was almost like Michael J. Fox adjacent in the 80s. And then all of a sudden, and you got to remember, like whatever your feelings played one of the coolest characters of all time. And then afterwards just stopped playing cool characters. Like he ostensibly became Rooney and Cameron rolled into one. Like, he was in what was it, The Cable Guy and Election, like basically playing Cameron and Rooney in those movies with like weird kind of soirees into the mainstream where he did like, everyone forgets now, but he was Inspector Gadget for 2 films. Those films were big. And he was in fucking Godzilla, but then he goes off and does Broadway for ages. And stuff
But you've chucked
such
about
a weird career.
but you've chucked about like you've gone 10 years after the fact for that. Because
Yeah.
Cable Guy was 96. So he's done loads in between that probably weren't Rooney. Because after this, he did Project X, all right, the sign language monkey thing. But he did Biloxi Blues, where he was Ferris Bueller and she's having a baby from 1988 with Kevin
No,
Bacon.
sorry. I didn't mean from the moment he made this. I just mean like from the 80s going into the 90s.
He's had a decent, like the family business film was pretty shit. But I remember Glory, I remember loving. I thought Glory was fantastic.
No, I get I'm not saying he's had a bad career whatsoever. I just think coming off Ferris Bueller, a lot of people probably had an idea of what kind of career he was going to have going into the 90s, 2000s.
Okay. Yeah.
And he just ended up going in a completely different direction. One of the oddest ones is that supposedly he was going to play Johnny Utah in Point Break. Now, how the fuck anyone thought that was going to work? Maybe it's because it's so synonymous with Keanu Reeves now. And Keanu Reeves is like 6'2", looks like a fucking quarterback. And then you just like Ferris Bueller, he might be the coolest guy in the world, but physically he just doesn't have that same stature that Keanu Reeves has. He just doesn't. And I'm just like, I mean, I'd be interested to see the Matthew Broderick version of Point Break, but Jesus Christ, it would have been a very, very different movie.
It would be interesting to see him going up against Patrick Swayze. I just think
that's the thing you've said. That I literally can't imagine a proper fight between fucking Matthew Broderick and Patrick Swayze in that film. I just can't envision it. Like in a world where it would be convincing that it would be in any way an even fight. I'm just not buying it.
Well, that's because Matthew Broderick was never that actor, was he? He was never that like action star or anything like that. You can't name a film where
that's why
that's right. You can't name a film where he threw a punch. Same with Michael J. Fox. You can't really name a film where he threw a punch. I think the only one I can name off the top of my head is The Hard Way with James Woods, which again is a great film.
Oh Jesus Christ, that's a deep cut. I think I could have gone the rest of my life without remembering that. But then bizarrely, the moment you said it, I can remember the fucking poster. I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's like it all comes back to
against him, and the fact that LL Cool J is in it as one of the coppers.
I totally forgot about that as well.
I always find it interesting. Who was the bad guy in Avatar, the first one? He played Miles Quaritch. Was it Stephen?
What the fuck is his name? He's in Tombstone as well.
Yeah, he is in Tombstone.
Yeah, Colonel Quaritch. What the
Yeah.
fuck's his name? Yeah, I know what you mean. He's in the second one as well. He died, but he got better when
Yeah,
it was
Stephen Lang.
classified.
So,
Stephen Lang, thank you.
so Stephen Lang in 2009, that's when his face becomes recognizable. And then
Mhm.
you look at his career, and I know we've gone off the fucking rails here, but he was in the hard way. Is that he was the party boy and that the one that killed everybody. And then
Jesus Christ.
he's in Tombstone when we watched Tombstone the other week, and fuck me, Stephen Lang's been going. He's got like 138 credits to his name. He's been going fucking ages.
He is one of those guys though. Like when we did Tombstone on the podcast, I absolutely adore Tombstone. I've seen it so many times, but that even then, going back and rewatching the podcast, I just forgotten that Stephen Lang was in it. I was like, "Fuck, that's Stephen Lang." It was almost like I had to see Avatar because before he was just that guy. Like I didn't know. Most people didn't know him as Stephen Lang, but he became Stephen Lang because of Avatar. And then there's like 72 films you've gone back and rewatching. Hey man, that's fucking Stephen Lang.
And I'll give you that. If you're going to wonder how we're going to get back to Ferris Bueller from Stephen Lang was in Project X about the monkeys with Matthew Broderick, who was in Ferris Bueller.
There we go. Speaking of Ferris Bueller, I question like sometimes because I mentioned the fact that it's very 80s, but at the same time, it feels oddly modern. There are certain elements which really age this film, like the technology, the fact that they use the phone prank, like it feels like 7 times. There was just something in 80s cinema where it's just like, oh, if we're going to play a prank, we're going to do it on the phone. It just doesn't exist anymore. But one of the things that really stood out, I'm not sure if you noticed it, is when they went to Willis Tower, they referenced the fact that it's the tallest building in the world, which it was from I think it was built in like 1973. And I think it kept the title for like 25 years. But now, it probably wouldn't make like the top 25. It's just, the idea of Willis Tower being the tallest building. But that brings us, of course, to the big issue with this film, the timing of it all. So I mentioned at the top that this film is odd in many respects, and the fact that it wouldn't get made today in the form that it's in because it's so low key and low stakes. It's basically built around them just going out and having fun, and the question is, will they get caught? Yeah. The real question is, though, could they possibly do this in less than 8 hours? So to give you an idea, sorry, if you want to say something.
Yeah, no, I was just going to back to that point. Like, for the start, how long is it taking them to get from wherever they're living in the suburbs to the Chicago city center? Because
that's the big. So they pick up, right? If we're giving them, and we're giving them the benefit of the doubt here, they pick up Sloane from the school. He's dressed in like a fucking trench coat and makes out with her. It's like he wants to get caught by Rooney at this point. They pick her up at 9:30. That's best case scenario.
So you're going, okay. Is it taking about 45 minutes?
And they drop him off. He gets home after his run through town at 6 p.m. So that gives him what? Okay, 8.5 hours will give you for the whole day. And that is getting from the school. And so pick up Sloane at 9:30. They have to drive from the suburbs into downtown. They drop off the car. They go to see Willis Tower, even if they just pop in, whatever. They then go to the Chicago Board of Trade, or the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, whatever it's called. For whatever reason, it's one of the oddest scenes in the film. They then go for a fancy French lunch. Up until that point, I'm kind of on board. The thing is, the next thing they do is go for a day game at Wrigley Field. Now, I'm going to Chicago soon, so I know the distances. Wrigley Field is not in downtown at all. It's going to take you a good 40 minutes to get there alone.
There's no way they were there for 9 innings.
No way. Well, they actually say, and when they're watching the film, they're there for at least 3 innings because it's referenced in film that they're there for the third. So
I love that line as well. I know you want to do the timing, but when Rooney asked the pizza or hot dog guy, wherever, he goes, "Who's winning?" I know what you go. What's the score? Oh, well, the Americans don't do 0-0, do they?
No, they do 0-0. And he's like, yeah.
A 0-0 or whatever he said, and it's 0-0. He went, "Who's winning? The Cubs or whoever?"
No, he says the Bears.
Yeah,
he says the Bears. Yeah. So they go to a Cub game. Then they have to get from the Cubs game back to downtown because they go to the Art Institute, the Chicago Art Institute. Then they go to the Von Steuben Parade, which again, you have to take into consideration, that means parade traffic. Then they pick up the car and drive back to North Shore suburbs, again in parade traffic. And he has time to race across the neighborhood to get home before 6 p.m. Oh, and they go to the fucking beach, which isn't,
not just that.
Isn't that far.
Not just the beach. They then spend time to go in the hot tub of, I'm guessing, Cameron's house, and set up Cameron's car, put it on a jack, and have it set to reverse. And the other thing, if you want to get to it, with the parade float, he has to have enough time to choreograph 2 dances, one for Dankeschön and one for the twist.
Well, that's the whole thing, right? The parade sequence. That's a whole nother issue. Is at that point, it starts feeling like this might be a fable. Like it's so ridiculous. The fact, because obviously he hasn't choreographed it. He's just shown up and he's just
Yeah.
singing. Everyone loves him and they're just allowing it. And everyone starts dancing. And in fairness, it looks amazing. Another case of CG just being the worst because it's clearly on location. This is such a Chicago movie. And you see when he's on the parade, they've got a big ass crowd there and everyone's singing and dancing. And the crescendo is amazing. Does it make any sense? No. Is it complete movie logic? Absolutely. But with the music, the float, the fact that it's on location,
great.
it all looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. And you know it's shot on location, right? And you know it's real because the builders and a couple of the other guys that were dancing weren't actors. They were actually just working. The music was so loud, they hear this, so they started dancing. So John Hughes just filmed them.
See, that's so fucking awesome. It's so awesome. But that kind of plays up to the idea that this could be like if you rather than having say Ferris talking to the screen, if this was bookended by Cameron telling this story 20 years in the future, like basically that's what it feels like. It feels like somebody telling the story of this perfect day. Like in my head, it's almost like, oh, you know, like Stand By Me, where he's died, his friends died. What's his name? Fuck.
River Phoenix.
Yeah, River Phoenix's character in Stand By Me. Sorry, that's a deep cut. I'm putting you on the
Jake?
spot there.
No, it wasn't Jake, was it?
No, it doesn't matter. But anyway, River Phoenix's character in Stand By Me.
Keep talking.
The whole idea is that obviously he's died, so then LeChance is like he's telling the story. So he's almost like, you know, if Chris Chambers, thank you. If any of like Stand By Me doesn't really make sense, he's remembering what happened. So if this film was structured where Cameron is telling the story about like Ferris, like after he's died, it's like, dude, like this guy Ferris, he was the fucking man. Everyone fucking loved him. We went on this day and went to the Arts Institute and went to a Cubs game, and then there was a parade and he was fucking singing. It's like, yeah, you can imagine someone telling that story and it getting more and more ridiculous and becoming legend. And I can kind of buy into that. If you try and buy into the idea that this is actually happening, of course, it's silly as fuck. But
I mean, speaking of the silly part, how oblivious is his father as well?
Oh yeah, he's brilliant.
And they overuse the double take joke as well. I like the first one where they're in the same restaurant and he's at the bottom and Ferris just has that face going, of all the restaurants in the city, he comes to this one. But then they're in the taxi, he does the double take. Then he's dancing to Ferris singing Twist and Shout as the parade goes underneath. Okay, that's not really a double take. I know that. But then he's running next to his dad at home. He's running next to it. Like his father doesn't know, oh, that's my son running. Like
they use that joke a bit too much. And the fact is the second half of this film, it's still great. It's not quite as good as the first half as it becomes more and more ludicrous. And again, to lean the whole idea that it almost seems like fantasy. Like by the end of the day, his story is made that day's paper. Like how the fuck does that happen? His name ends up on the local water tower, the whole Save Ferris thing. It becomes more and more fantastical as it goes and becomes a little bit more broad with the comedy. Like you said, they go to the well one too many times, maybe three too many times with the whole, because like you said, that scene at the baseball stadium where Rooney almost looks up and sees him on TV, but doesn't quite. It's like it happens like 12 times. They almost get caught, but not quite. And like you said, it's made more egregious by the fact that it happens on numerous occasions to his father. It's like, okay, yeah, we get the joke. So it's not, like I said, the second half of the film isn't quite as good. It certainly doesn't make as much sense. But we're talking from a very high bar here. We're talking relative. The second half is still great. It's just not quite as brilliant as the first half of this film is literally lights out cinema. From, you know, for like 60 minutes, this film is almost perfect. And then the last 30, you can start picking holes in it if you want to. Of course, that all changes if you think Ferris is a dick, but, you know, each their own, of course. What can you do?
Did you, before we move on as well, did you see Del Close in this? Really quickly. Yeah, Del Close, who was the alderman in Untouchables, and
he's in all the Chicago films.
He was in this one. He was Sloane's teacher, who the nurse comes in and speaks to, and then takes Sloane out.
Oh yeah, that's a great shout. Another thing, because we were talking about the parade sequence. Firstly, did you know when you were growing up that the song is called Dankeschön, as in the German for thank you?
Yeah.
Well, like one for the longest time, I was like, who the hell is Danka Shane? Because the singer, it's Wayne, and another surprise, Wayne Newton is not a woman. That is a guy singing that in a high tenor.
Yeah.
And on top of that, he's saying Danka Shane, baby Danka Shane. I'm like, it's not Danka Shun. Like, he's just saying the wrong fucking thing. I always thought it was ridiculous, but never mind. And that song is weird. I had never noticed before, but it is peppered throughout the entire film.
Yeah.
4 different characters sing little bits of it in the build-up to the parade at the end. I think Rooney sings it once, Jeannie definitely sings it. And I just never noticed that before. That was kind of cool.
You made me laugh then, right? Because you said it was Danka Shane. I had a woman in work who'd never heard of the song Feliz Navidad.
Oh, that could be anything. Yeah.
And when she first heard it, she thought it was Philip and his dad.
Fantastic. The worst case that I ever had, and I didn't have the heart to tell my friends. I'm not sure if it's the same in your school, but men behaving badly became really popular when I was in high school. So it would have been like the mid-90s. And I remember everyone talking about it, and I'd never heard of it. And when people were talking about it, I didn't hear men behaving badly. I heard member, have, and badly. And I was like, what the fuck does member, have, and badly mean? I was like, is that their names? And I found out like a week later, and I just didn't have the heart to tell anyone because I didn't want to become member, have, and badly.
That's a terrible law firm, isn't it? Member, have, and badly.
That's exactly what it sounds like, though. It totally sounds like a terrible law firm. That's a great shout. Great shout.
Right, we need to move on.
Before we move on, we've not really mentioned Rooney. And the only thing I'll say is, because we could talk about him for ages, is I never realized that towards the end of this film, it ostensibly becomes a dry run for Home Alone. So even before he gets into the house, like the further he gets into the house and the more he gets fucked up, I was like, wait a minute, this feels like Home Alone. And then all of a sudden, when he has the run-in with Jeannie, she kicks him in the face. And then she does what can only be described as a classic Macaulay Culkin scream. The scream is even shot in the same way. It's like he does something with the frames, and then it's sped up, and she runs up the stairs in the same. Yeah. I'm like, it has to be a nod. A nod to it would be underselling it. It's basically just like, I'm going to do this again with Home Alone. But the whole
he thought it worked well. It'll look better with a kid doing it, and he was right. It looked great.
But Rooney, for 15 minutes, this film becomes Home Alone. It's crazy.
Rooney should be fired.
100%. He's not doing any job.
Why is he breaking in to a student's house? Whether or not he thinks the student is getting away with murder, he's breaking into his house.
Yeah, well, not only that, but on a fundamental level, you've got to assume that he has work to do. He's just not, all he's doing is trying to catch Ferris. I mean, do you not have any responsibilities at the school? It's absolutely ludicrous.
Even if you think it's Ferris on the phone, you don't call him an asshole and say, let's drag the old broad out, show me your body, and then I'll show you your daughter.
He really goes for it, like hardcore. Like the fact, like this is one day in Rooney's life. Like you said, like how was he not fucking fired years ago? Rooney is so utterly incompetent. He does have some great lines, and I know we have some issues with some issues. Jeffrey Jones, obviously, more than a bit of a wrong-un. It's such a shame because he's so good on screen. Like I love him in Beetlejuice. He's absolutely fantastic in this. Like again. He doesn't have much screen time with Ferris, but he totally feels like his nemesis through the whole film. Yeah. In many respects, that's what his character is. It's like Nemesis. He just keeps showing up in the film. You just can't get rid of him. He's fucking awesome.
I totally agree.
And we have to move on because I've got so much more I could say about this film. But we are going to have to move on for the sake of time. Although he does have one great line. I didn't get into this position in life by letting some snot-nosed kid leave me like cheese in the wind, I think the term was.
Yeah.
I've never heard the term cheese in the wind before or since. Very strange. Very strange. Anyway, let's move on. Favorite scene? Do you want to go for it or?
Yeah, I'll go for it. It's the talk at the end, I think, like the car. Even though I said I don't think that Ferris would actually take the rap. It's the talk he's having with Cameron and because it's Cameron. Cameron's like, no, I've got to do it. I've got to. He's treating me like shit my whole life. I've got to stand up to him. No, it's fine, Ferris. It's fine. All I was expecting then is another fourth wall break and him going, and that was the last we ever saw of Cameron. But other than
Cameron
that,
was murdered by his father 20 minutes later.
But I think it's great. The acting in that, it's when Ferris finally shuts up and just listens, and
Mhm,
Cameron's able to speak and give longer than a couple of sentences.
mhm,
I think it's great. I think it's delivered great. Sloane is just in the background realizing that Cameron is actually like becoming a better person.
Well,
So no,
that
not
kind of
better person.
leans
Sorry,
into
better person is the wrong kind of word. He's becoming more confident in
well-rounded.
himself.
Yeah,
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 yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, and again, I think it kind of leans into this whole idea that Ferris had it all planned. Like by the end, Ferris is being incredibly pragmatic, not only about himself, but about Sloane and about Cameron. The way he talks about it is like, listen, I'm realistic about this. It's like we're going to go to different schools. I don't know how I'm going to make my relationship with Sloane work. I like Cameron's going to be a fucking mess, and he even says like this is going to be it. Like it's not
yeah,
one of those you almost pretend, don't you? It's like we'll catch up on the weekends, we'll talk all the time. Like he's super pragmatic. He's like, listen, we're going to go to separate schools, and that'll be that. He'll make friends, I'll make friends. And it's like the thing that's kept us together is that we've both grown up in Shermer, Illinois, and now we're going off in our separate directions, and that'll be it. So yeah, and again, I think it's one of those like the first couple of watches, you never think about it being that kind of film, but I really do believe that this whole movie is about exactly what you said, about Ferris giving Cameron the confidence he needs to get on with the rest of his life
yeah,
and not
yeah.
be an absolute sap, basically. Um, what do I have? Not anything as deep as that, sadly. Basically, it would either be Cameron calling Rooney pretending to be Sloane's father, which is
Okay,
absolute gold. You mentioned that. Or it probably would be Ferris breaking the fourth wall, as he describes the best way to skip school, simply because it shouldn't work.
yeah,
It's like, as I'm watching, I'm like, why isn't this terrible? It should be fucking terrible. But again, so much of it comes down to the writing and Matthew Broderick's performance. So I'm going to go with that instead. So that's my
yeah.
favorite scene. How about Loves?
Loves. So it's the fourth wall break. I had that for my love. I think it's done very well. It's done sporadically, but it's really good. I really enjoy that. We hadn't mentioned him actually at all,
Mhm.
but I love Richard Edson. Is it Edson? Yeah, Richard Edson, who played Spike in Super Mario Brothers as the garage attendant. You don't see him much. You just, but you can
He's great.
imagine their adventure. They put 200 odd miles onto that car. What the fuck did they do?
What were they doing?
Like,
Again, that sequence as well, like this whole idea that Ferris is a bit of everyone. It's like, what is it again politically? Like you think of him as being this everyman, but when he goes into the garage and he talks to that guy so condescendingly, like he doesn't speak English, and the guy's like, "Where the fuck do you think I'm from?" And then
yeah.
someone's like, "What kind of person is Ferris? Is he a fucking Republican? Is he an asshole?" I don't. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
And my last one is Sloane. I think Mia Sarah Sloane is great in this,
Yeah, I
and
think
she's hot,
she's
and she's
yeah,
hot.
yeah, she's super hot. Loves Matthew Broderick is perfect as Ferris. But make no mistake, the whole cast is amazing, including old ass Alan Ruck Cameron, who's equally fantastic. And I think so. Who was it? I read it somewhere that someone described this as like one of the theories about this film is that this is Cameron's Fight Club. Like he's having a mental breakdown and Ferris doesn't exist. So Ferris is
Okay,
his
yeah.
Tyler Durden. So it's basically he's convincing himself to do all these things and then to ultimately kick the shit out of his dad's car. And then when he comes back and he's all like, oh, well, Ferris this. And like, who the fuck is Ferris? And then he
Yeah.
realizes he just made him all up. There's actually a bit of weight to that for one for the fact that we spend so much time at the start of the film with Ferris. But hey, whatever. Number two, I just love the tone. Like I said, this isn't getting made in the same way in 2024. It's such a sweet movie in many respects. And as I mentioned so many times, it's incredibly low key. And for a film which is so low key, has so many iconic shots. Like we didn't even mention the chase at the end of the film. Like, it's like, how does that work? Where it has March of the Swivelheads by the beat. It became one of the most iconic scenes in 80s cinema. And all he's doing is running around the suburbs in Chicago with really zero threat going on. Unbelievable.
Fair gives a credit to the Ferris is a dick quote as well. I say quote my theory.
Yeah.
He just said he's in love with Sloane. Then he stopped trying to get home so he could shake hands and introduce himself to two girls in bikinis. Ferris is a
Whoa,
dick.
whoa. No, he's just a red-blooded male. He's just a red-blooded male. And it's a great Chicago movie. A big reason for why I'm going. But, you think about the fact that he has like a 10-minute sequence in this film in the Art Institute of Chicago. And it's like, that should not work. It's like, why can they get away with 10 minutes where they're just looking at art? If only so Cameron can have, I'm not sure if it's an existential crisis or a kind of like an epiphany or something, but it should, supposedly it didn't work initially because before they I think the music they use is an instrumental version of Please 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 Let Me Get What I Want by the Smiths, but initially they had Robert Smith of The Cure write a song for that, but in test screenings it just fucking tanked them. It was like, we just don't get why this seems why it's in the film. But then they changed the music and suddenly they're just like, oh yeah, this works now. It's absolutely bizarre, but as I said, great Chicago movie, so those are my loves.
Hate then. So for me, it's whether or not Ferris is a dick. I think he's a dick, and I'm not a fan of that.
Who the you were without question, I think the only person in the world who watches this film and their number one hate is Ferris fucking Bueller.
Bueller. I gotta go with Jeannie didn't have much to do. I didn't like that at all. I didn't think she had much to do. And it sounds a bit petty, but if you look into it too much, they do too much in a day. They can't totally do all that in a day. It's ridiculous.
No. It's fine when you watch it for the first time, but as soon as you stop and think about it, all falls to pieces. In terms of my hates, it's a massive shame that Jeffrey Jones is such a Rogan, as I love him on the screen. I already mentioned it earlier. Number two, Ferris might be one of the coolest guys of all time, but I'm not having that low-slung leopard print waistcoat. It's just the fucking worst. And number three, as I mentioned earlier, it's another fashion issue, which probably speaks to how much I love this film. Despite the fact that she's super hot, she's totally undermined by the tassel jacket, which is just, and the name for that matter, just absolutely unnecessary behavior.
I like Sloane. I think Sloane's a good name.
I really don't like the name Sloane. Any alternative titles for this film?
Yeah, we got a couple. Yeah, these are interesting. So Argentina, an expert in fun.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Austria and Germany, I don't know what the fuck they watched. Ferris Makes Blue.
Ferris Makes Blue?
Yeah.
That sounds almost erotic.
Yeah.
Yeah, very strange. Not having that.
Brazil, Enjoying the Crazy Life.
No, not really.
Denmark, A Wild Day of Truancy.
That's fair enough. It's on the nose, but sure.
Yeah. So there's two for Finland. One is the video box title, and then there's three for Finland.
Finland showing off again.
Yeah. So the first one is Let's Switch to Free Ferris.
Okay, that doesn't make any sense. It's got to be.
The video box title is Let's Take Time Off Ferris.
Sure. Again, it sounds like a kind of a kids program, though. Like, let's learn to count to 10.
Yeah. And then the random one, just for fun, I guess. Add Freely Ferris.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Finland had 3 cracks of the whip, and that's what they came up with. It's not great, Finland. It's not fucking great.
Greece, Ferris Bueller's Deafest Day.
Deafest Day?
Deafest as in deaf, as in...
Yeah. Maybe it's the slang thing? I don't fucking know.
Yeah. I think Hungary actually watched just a really quick scene with Richard Edson when he was in the car.
Okay.
Because I hung out with Ferrari.
Yeah, I guess Ferris does hang out with Ferrari and they have their moment with the Ferrari, and the Ferrari is a massive part of this film, but I'm not sure if I'm naming the film after, that's for sure.
Italy, A Crazy Day Off. It is what it is.
Fine. Yeah, it is a crazy day off, I suppose.
Japan bringing the goods. They got 2. So Japan's first one is Ferris Suddenly One Morning.
Sounds almost poetic.
Yeah.
Nonsense, but poetic.
And their other one, The Devil's Arc Is.
Okay, what the fuck? That's almost as bad as the Finnish ones.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, these have been terrible.
Mexico, An Amusement Expert.
Yes, okay, sure. That's similar to the first one, which sounded terrible because the other one's been so bad. That suddenly sounds a little bit better.
Norway, Truancy and Style.
Yeah, that's okay.
Poland, Mr. Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Well, why formal? Seems unnecessary.
Portugal, The King of Gazettas. Or Gazetteers. Gazetteers.
Gazette. I thought you meant Gazette as in like a newspaper, but no, I have no idea.
Gazetteers. Romania, The Cylinder Head.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Is that a reference to a car, maybe?
The cylinder in it's got to be,
yeah.
What do they call it? Are they called like gearheads?
Yeah, gearheads. Maybe it's I mean, it still doesn't make any sense because, again, the car's important, but not to the character in that. Very strange.
Spain, all in one day.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that is
Yeah.
the thing we've kind of got caught with. Really? All in
Yeah.
one day? But
Yeah.
maybe if you threw a question mark at the end, I'd be more on board with it.
Mate, these keep going. These are fantastic. Sweden, celebrate with Ferris.
No. What are you really
Ta-
celebrating?
Taiwan, skipping class genius.
Mm, lame.
United Arab Emirates, Ferris Bueller's day of.
Jesus Christ. That's a lot. None of it makes any sense, but sure, it's a lot.
And Vietnam, Ferris Bueller's vacation.
It was not a vacation. Like, whatever. It's not the worst one, sadly. I've got to ask, so before we move on to facts, did you ever actually, well, as you would call it, Mitch, as we used to call it, sorry, when we were kids, or go truant? Because that's the whole thing. Like, the big draw of this film, certainly when you're growing up, is this idea like, oh, you take the day off school and you have this amazing day. I did it once. Once my friend and I had like short notice, last minute, we're like, let's just fucking skip school and just go into town. Obviously, we went to Cardiff rather than Chicago. And do you know what it was? Shit. I was just scared the whole time, totally worried about getting caught. And within 20 minutes, we got so bored. I remember at lunchtime, we went back to my house, which was the equivalent of like showing up in the Ferrari and kissing Sloane, where you're like almost like you want to get caught. My mum was like, "What do you?" Because I never came home at lunch because my high school was too far away, and I made up some bullshit story because we were just bored of walking around because there was nothing to fucking do. So yeah, Liam Pritchard's day off was bullshit.
Well, I've mitched more than once, I will admit that. But we would just, like, our mitching would be going to the old Red Cap school that was closed down. So we just sit in the woods and smoke. Like, there's nothing to do except do that.
See, we were a bit younger as well. We were like,
We didn't, but where our
we were
school
like
was,
14.
yes, we were as well. But where our school was, it was nowhere near the town centre or anything.
Okay, fair enough.
So we had nothing to do
Neither
unless we
was
start
us.
getting,
We got the
getting on
bus
buses
in.
or whatever.
Instead of, we didn't have a Ferrari, so we just caught the bus into town and just walked around. And we quickly found out we didn't have any money. We're in school uniform on a Tuesday, which is like suspect as fuck. So we just walked around town for like an hour and just thought, oh, we're bored now. It was terrible. Anyway, terrible. Let's move on to facts.
Yep. So during the parade, several other people seen dancing, including a construction worker and a window washer. Originally had nothing to do with the film. They were simply dancing to the music being played, and John Hughes found it so humorous that he told the camera operators to record it.
That's cool.
The idea of a sequel had gone around for years with Ferris in college or on the job somewhere, but the idea was dropped. Matthew Broderick felt that the film didn't need a sequel, didn't need updating. The film is about a specific time and place that audiences would like to revisit. I agree with that.
100%.
Cindy Pickett and Lyman Ward, who were mum and dad, they actually married in real life after filming this movie, and then
cool.
they later divorced in 1992. So they only married for
Not
like
so
6
cool.
years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, they had a few years at least.
John Hughes told Ben Stein, who had a degree in economics, to present an actual economics lecture in his scenes. Hence, nothing Stein says, aside from the roll call, is scripted.
Fantastic.
I love that one where he goes.
Is there maybe a more iconic role with less words? Like, in fairness, how many kids in that class have surnames that begin with A?
Yeah,
He goes
there
through
was
like
loads
6
of...
kids, and they
I
all
can't
begin
watch.
with A.
I can't watch a roll call with thinking of Aaron anymore. But
Oh yeah, of course. God
yeah.
damn it.
But that was scripted. But then you had when he's going, can you somebody tell me about this? Anybody? Yes. And he's just answering his own questions because everyone's
That's
just
awesome.
like,
He's
bored.
so good. He's so good,
Yeah.
man.
Mia Sarah says that Matthew Broderick actually tickled her feet and knees to get her to laugh naturally in a taxi cab scene.
Cool.
Rooney's line about leaving my cheese in the wind was ad-libbed. John Hughes wanted a comment that was complete nonsense.
Well, he got it.
Charlie Sheen was recommended by Jennifer Grey after they did Red Dawn together.
Good choice. He was awesome.
Alan Ruck, then 29, worried about the age difference. I was worried about I'd be 10 years out of step and I wouldn't know anything that was what was cool, what was hip, all that junk. But when I was going to high school, I didn't know any of that stuff then either.
Yeah.
So I just thought, well, hell, I'll just be me. The character, he's such a loner that he really wouldn't give a damn about that stuff anyway. He'd feel guilty that he didn't know it, but that's it. Ruck wasn't surprised to find himself cast young. No, because really, when I was 18, I sort of looked 12, he said. Maybe it's a genetic imbalance. You think he's old as fuck. He reckons he was looking young as fuck.
No, maybe it's in the middle. I don't know.
Yeah. The hand that presses the speaker button on Cameron's phone belongs to John Hughes. When the crew left, Hughes took the camera and shot it himself since no one else was getting it right.
What a bizarre thing.
Yeah. The parade sequence, twist and shout, was filmed during the Von Steuben Day Parade, an annual event in the Chicagoland area. You already said that was the name of the parade. The short scene with the coffin keyboard was improvised by Matthew Broderick. This is explained in the commentary on the DVD. This is absolutely low, so I'll just leave it
Yeah,
at
it's
that.
Bansby.
Yeah.
Bansby. So this is Hope to the Future. So this is where we ask a question: remake, sequel, Don't Touch or Let It Die. This is one of the easiest ones. Leave it well alone. The TV show didn't work, as you mentioned. The sequel mercifully never happened. This movie is, in many respects, lightning in a bottle. Both timing, the cast, the crew, everything about it. Leave it be. Just belong.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like you said, it doesn't need to be because it still holds up. It's still fantastic to watch. So yeah, leave it be.
Yeah, I agree. Just let it. Just leave it alone. You don't
Yes.
need anything further.
No. In terms of making a change, this is where you could only make one change to this movie. I know it's a bit of a sneaky one, but I'd probably make it so Jeffrey Jones didn't solicit a minor. It would just make it an easier watch. That's my only issue with this film, is the fact I have to deal with the fact that, Jeffrey Jones is brilliant in it, but I know he's an absolute wrong, which is a bit of a shame. Oh, and if I was going to add one other thing, I think it'd be cool to have like a minor cameo from one of the Breakfast Club's kids, because this is also in Shermer High School, right? They're both in the same high school.
I think so.
It's a year later. Why couldn't you just have one of them in the background? It would have been cool, but hey, a minor issue to say the least. But that speaks to how much I love this film. So those, if I was going to make a change, it'd be one of those.
I want to see how Cameron's dad murders him.
That would be good. That would be good. Well, because this has got like a bit of an all-time when it comes to end of credit sequences. The fame, like you said, Deadpool sends up when he comes out and says, "Are you still here? Go home." Blah blah blah. Although the same year, actually maybe it was a year later, the first time I came across an end credit sequence was Masters of the Universe, where we stayed till the end credits because it was the first time I ever watched in the cinema.
pops up and goes,
Frank Langella, and
yeah.
I'll be back, man. He wasn't back. That was the end of that. But this one's probably cooler. But if they then cut to just Cameron dead, or is dad actually in the act of killing him? Jesus Christ.
It's seeing Cameron lying on top of the Ferrari, isn't it? Because his
Oh,
dad's
yeah. He's just pushed him off in a moment of madness. Well, how would he not? Jesus Christ. I mean, dudes, that fucking car. And the thing is, you wouldn't even blame him. He wouldn't even go to jail. He would explain the situation. Dude, look at the car. Look what he fucking did. They're like, oh, yeah, fair play. He had to die. He had to die.
But in reality, that was my joke one. In reality, it would be giving Genie a bit more to do.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah. In terms of video games, unsurprisingly, it wasn't a Ferris Bueller's Day Off video game. If I was going to have somebody make one today, it was an easy answer for me. It'd be the Persona team. So they're called the P Studio by, I think the publisher's Atlas. So I would just have a Persona video game, but without all the RPG battles, just have the social interactions and time management that the series is famous for, condense it down to one day, and just basically make it a game about managing your friendship with Cameron, your love life with Sloane, all the while trying to fit in as many activities as possible in Chicago without getting caught. And as I mentioned earlier about Rooney, you could have him be the kind of nemesis character of the video game. So all the time you're trying to do this, he can show up at any moment. And just, oh, fuck, Rooney's here again. Or maybe even Ferris's dad, because he's an idiot. He was never going to spot him. So that's what I'd go for.
For me, I'd have High Voltage Software do a Leisure Suit Larry skin.
Oh, that's a great shot. That's much better than mine.
Leisure Suit Larry, if you don't know, it's basically about a horn dog guy, and you've got to help him get laid. So you go through a bunch of, but it's just him traveling in his day, and then I'd do Leisure Suit Larry. I think. Good
shout. Scores and recommendations. This is going to be an interesting one because I've gone back and forth on this between a 4 and a 5. Like it should be a 4.5. I'm bordering 5, but because, as I said, I don't think the second half's quite as good. I'm going to say 4, but it's a very, very strong 4. And as to whether I'd recommend it, 100%. As I mentioned numerous times, it's utterly timeless, totally watchable, great cast, great direction, great writing. So 4, very strong 4, and a yes to recommend.
This is going to be an interesting one because it is a 3. It's a 3 because of the way Ferris Bueller acts.
Harsh, very harsh.
But I would recommend it. I still enjoyed the film. I just you have to look at it through a different set of eyes, I think.
Yeah. No, I get it. Like, like you said, like you can watch this and be like, you might not fall in love with it in the same way, but it's still totally watchable. So that's Ferris Bueller. Next week, I kind of undenied as to whether I was going to do Adventures in Babysitting or another Chicago movie. I've not picked a Chicago movie, but it is tangentially linked. Did I say that right? Tangentially linked to a movie we did as part of the Chicago season. So the year is 1990. As I said, it's tangentially linked to another film we've covered recently.
Okay, carry on. I'm not going to get it from 1990.
I'm not sure if I should give you the director or the tagline. I'm going to give you the tagline. There are two of them. The first one is "The Hunt is On." That's not so helpful, that one.
Not The Hunt for Red October.
It is The Hunt for Red October.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. I was going to say the second one. As I said it, I was like, that's not very helpful. I was like, well, Hunt is in the title. But the second one was Invisible, Silent Stolen, and then the director is John McTiernan. So, yeah, it's...
Is
the
that
link being, of course...
what's his name? Fucking... Harrison Ford has played him. And is Alec Baldwin in this?
Yeah, Alec Baldwin's playing, what's it called, from the video games? Tom Clancy.
Jack Ryan.
Jack Ryan, sorry. Tom Clancy.
Yeah, so this is a Jack Ryan film, isn't it?
Yeah, Jack Ryan's written by Tom Clancy, right? Is that right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. It is a Jack Ryan film. And it's also the movie, obviously, in terms of the link, it's Sean Connery doing a very Scottish-sounding Lithuanian. But... as you mentioned earlier, those weird films where you kind of almost assume you've watched and then suddenly realize you've never seen it. I've never seen The Hunt for Red October.
So this is going to be interesting. Neither have I. Which
is absolutely bonkers, right? Like 1990, John McTiernan, massive hit. And like, I had never seen, what's the other one? The Deep Impact to this Armageddon. Crimson Tide. I'd never seen Crimson Tide until recently. And I watched Crimson Tide. Crimson Tide's dope. And I was like, fuck, I've already watched it now. This is going to be the excuse to go back and rewatch, watch The Hunt for Red October for the first time. But that's amazing that neither of us have seen it.
I've not seen any of the Jack Ryans aside from I think I started the TV show, but I've not watched the Harrison Ford Jack Ryans, the Chris Pine one, the Ben Affleck one. I've not watched any Jack Ryan.
It was the Sum of All Fears. That was the Ben Affleck one, wasn't it? Anyway, well, this is going to be interesting because neither of us have seen it before, but it's seen as something of a classic, some dodgy accents going on, but it should be a fun one. So anything else to add before we wrap the show up?
Yeah, I mentioned there as a joke earlier on, but we've now added a send us a text message little option on your podcaster of choice. So if you want to get in touch with us, just pop us a little text message and we'll have a dick. I mean, if you want to say that you think Liam's a dick, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, this feels like you're setting me up to a certain extent, but it is what it is.
But no, tell us what you think. Is Ferris a dick? Is Ferris not a dick? It'd be interesting.
That will be interesting. Surely the world's going to be on my side. Well, we'll find out soon enough, I'm sure. Okay, I've been Liam. He has been Rob, and you have been listening to Hey You Guys podcast. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.